The number one rule of public transit is simple: let people get off before you get on. It is the foundation of the whole system, the grease in the gears that keeps thousands of us moving every single day. Dia's not just a suggestion. It's the social contract we all agree to when we tap our transit card. And yet, some people act like this cardinal rule is written in invisible ink. One day, a woman on a packed bus decided that rule just didn't apply to her. She wasn't just ignoring it, she was actively defying it, creating a human dam at the exit. When I accidentally brushed past her trying to, exit the bus, she cursed me out in front of everyone. What she didn't expect was that I'd shut her down with a single ridiculous question that had the whole bus trying not to laugh. If you've ever wished for the perfect comeback in a moment like that, you're going to want to hear this. Stick around, because this story is a masterclass in petty public transit justice. Let us set the scene, because the atmosphere was as much a character in this drama as anyone. It was a Tuesday in late autumn, one of those days where the sky can decide if it wants to be gray or just a darker, more depressing shade of gray, the kind of damp cold that seeps right into your bones, no matter how many layers you've got on. I was in Philadelphia, and if you know anything about Philly, you know our public transit. SEPTA is the lifeblood of the city. It is a beautifully chaotic system, a rolling, rumbling microcosm of society. And on this particular Tuesday at 5:45 p.m., it was pure chaos. My day had been well. It had been a day. The kind of day that feels like a 13-hour meeting about absolutely nothing. My brain felt like a wrung-out sponge, and my social battery wasn't just at zero. It was in the negative, actively draining power from my future self. All I wanted was to get home, collapse on my couch, and argue with my streaming service about what to watch for 2 hours before rewatching a show I've already seen 6 times. You know the feeling. The bus I needed was the 47. For those who don't know, the 47 route is one of the city's workhorses. It travels through a dozen different neighborhoods, and as a result, the bus is always a fascinating and often overwhelming blend of humanity. It was rush hour, which on the 47 doesn't just mean crowded. It means you develop an intimate, non-consensual relationship with the armpits, backpacks, and grocery bags of at least 4 strangers. When the bus finally arrived, it sighed to the curb already looking tired, its windows fogged from the collective breath of everyone packed inside. The doors hissed open and a wave of people spilled out. As is tradition, a competing wave of us on the sidewalk immediately tried to surge forward. It is a dance as old as time, the delicate balance between desperation to get on and the physical impossibility of occupying the same space as those getting off. I managed to squeeze on, finding a small pocket of air to call my own near the back. The journey itself was a symphony of city life. The rhythmic squeal of the brakes, the automated voice announcing stops in a weary monotone, the low hum of a dozen conversations blending into a meaningless buzz. A guy a few feet away was listening to music so loud through his headphones that I could make out every single lyric. A woman was having a very intense phone conversation about someone named Brenda, who apparently had some nerve. It was all standard procedure. I put in my own headphones not to listen to anything, but just to have a physical barrier assigned to the world that I had clocked out from social interaction. I stood holding a pole, swaying with the bus as it lurched through traffic. I watched the city lights smear past the window, my mind a million miles away. I was thinking about what was in my fridge for dinner. I was thinking about a deadline I had the next day. I was thinking about whether I had the energy to do laundry or if I could get away with wearing the same pair of jeans for a third day. With every stop, the bus got more and more packed. People were pressed shoulder to shoulder, a sea of tired faces united by the singular goal of getting somewhere else. This shared experience, this collective exhaustion, is usually what binds us in a silent pact of mutual tolerance. Usually. My stop was approaching. It is a busy one, where a lot of people get on and off. As a seasoned rider, I began my migration to the rear exit doors about 2 blocks early. This is a strategic, almost chess-like move. You have to bob and weave, offering a series of apologetic excuse me's as you inch your way through the human forest. It takes patience and some serious spatial awareness. I was a veteran of this daily migration, but on this day, my path was blocked by an obstacle I hadn't counted on. As I got closer to the back doors, I saw her. She was standing directly in front of them, not like she was about to get off, but like she was guarding them. Picture this. The bus is a tube of toothpaste, and everyone behind her is the toothpaste wanting to get out. She, however, had decided to be the cap, a very stubborn, unyielding cap. She was a woman who looked to be in her late 50s, wearing a coat that was way too big for her, giving her the look of a linebacker. She had two massive, reusable grocery bags, the kind with reinforced bottoms filled to the brim. She wasn't holding them at her sides that would have been considerate. No, she had them planted firmly on the floor on either side of her, creating a wide, impassable fortress of groceries. Her stance was defiant, arms crossed, a permanent scowl on her face, staring out the window with an intensity that suggested she was personally offended by the scenery. She was the physical embodiment of someone who believes the world is a movie and they are the main character. Everyone else? We were just extras. She wasn't getting ready to exit. She was just waiting for her stop, which was clearly several stops away, but had decided that this specific high-traffic piece of real estate by the door was hers by divine right. The unspoken rule, the one baked into the DNA of every commuter, is that you stand clear of the doors to let people off. It's not complicated. You make a path. It's a simple act of spatial courtesy that makes the whole system work. This woman, however, was operating under a different set of laws, the laws of her. As my stop was announced, Broad and Snyder, this is Broad and Snyder, a small group of us, myself included, started to shuffle toward the rear exit. We were the salmon, and she was the bear, standing right in the middle of the stream. The doors hissed open. The moment of truth. An older gentleman in front of me, who looked even more tired than I felt, said a gentle, "Excuse me, miss." She didn't move, didn't even flinch. She just shifted her gaze from the window to him, gave him a look that could curdle milk, and turned back to the window. He was dismissed. The man, clearly not a fighter, sighed a sigh of pure defeat and began the awkward process of squeezing himself, millimeter by millimeter, between her and the pole. It was painful to watch. He had to turn sideways, suck in his gut, and perform a move that was part limbo, part contortionist act. He finally popped free, like a cork from a very tight bottle, and scurried off the bus. Now it was my turn, and behind me, a few more people were waiting. The bus driver, probably watching in the mirror, could likely sense the logjam. The doors, on their timer, threatened to close. The pressure was on. I took a breath. There are a few ways to handle this. You can be overly polite, you can be firm, or you can just push. I decided to start with level 1, politeness. After all, maybe she was just lost in thought. Maybe she was having an even worse day than me. Benefit of the doubt, right? "Excuse me," I said, in a voice that was friendly but clear. "I need to get off here." She turned her head slowly, like a villain in a cheesy play. She looked me up and down. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't say a word. She just stared. It was a stare that communicated, with shocking efficiency, that I was a tiny annoyance, a gnat, buzzing in her personal airspace. Then she did the unthinkable. She adjusted her stance to make it even wider and crossed her arms tighter. She was doubling down. Okay, so much for politeness. Time for level 2, firmness. "Ma'am, you're blocking the door," I said, a little louder this time. "Several of us need to get out." The woman behind me chimed in with a quiet, "Yeah, come on." This finally seemed to animate the scowling guardian of groceries. She spoke. Her voice was raspy, like she gargled with gravel. "Wait your turn," she croaked, not even looking at me, but directing her words to the middle distance. My brain short-circuited. Wait my turn? My turn to do what exactly? Defy physics and phase through her? My turn to exit the bus was, in fact, right now. This was the designated time and place for my turn. Her turn to stand there like a statue was at literally any other spot on the bus. The doors made that warning beep, the sound that signals they're about to close and trap you on the bus for another 3 blocks, a fate worse than death when you're this tired. Panic and a healthy dose of indignation started bubbling up inside me. I had no choice. I had to do what the man before me did. I had to attempt the squeeze. I turned sideways, holding my work bag in front of me like a shield. "Excuse me," I repeated, not as a question, but as a statement. I began to slide past her in the narrow channel she had left between her fortress and the door frame. I was hyper-aware of not touching her, moving like a bomb disposal expert trying to navigate a laser grid. My shoulder was pressed against the cold rubber of the door seal, my other side a hair's breadth from her enormous coat. I was almost there. I could taste freedom. The cold night air was on my face. I had one foot on the step, about to plant it on the sweet, sweet concrete of the sidewalk. And then it happened. My bag, the one I was holding in front of me ever so slightly, brushed against her arm. It was barely a touch, a feather-light caress, the kind of contact you wouldn't even notice. But to her, it was an act of war. The second my bag made contact, she exploded. It was instant and shockingly loud. It was like I had flipped a switch on a hidden rage vortex. "What the F-bomb is wrong with you?" she shrieked. The sound cut through the bus's hum like a siren. Every head turned. The guy with the loud headphones pulled an earbud out. The woman on the phone about Brenda went silent. The entire bus, all 60 pairs of eyes, were now locked on us. I was frozen, my foot halfway to the pavement, my body half in, half out of the bus. I turned to look at her, my mouth hanging open. She wasn't done. Oh no, she was just warming up. "Did you not hear me? I said wait your F-bombing turn, you rude a-word." Her face was red, her eyes bulging. "You think you can just push people around? You think you're so important you can't wait?" The irony was so thick you could have sliced it and served it as a sandwich. Here she was, the immovable object who refused a simple, polite request to move, screaming at me for being rude. She was yelling about waiting your turn, while actively preventing me from taking mine. It was a breathtaking display of hypocrisy, a masterwork of zero self-awareness. My first instinct was a flash of white-hot anger. I wanted to yell back, to point out the colossal, galactic absurdity of her position. I wanted to list all the ways she was the one breaking the social contract. But then, a second, more mischievous instinct took over. I looked at her, red-faced and screaming. I looked at the stunned faces of the other passengers, our captive audience. I realized that yelling back would just make me another crazy person on the bus. It would escalate things, probably get the driver involved, and make everyone's commute even worse. As they say, you don't wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty and the pig likes it. I needed a different approach. Something that would disarm her, not engage her. Something that would highlight how absurd she was being, without me saying a single aggressive word. And then, the perfect, most ridiculous thought popped into my head. It was a gamble. It could backfire spectacularly. But in that split second, I decided it was a risk worth taking. I slowly pulled my foot back onto the bus and turned to face her fully. I straightened my jacket. I put on an expression of extreme, almost clinical seriousness. I looked her directly in the eyes, ignoring the tirade still spewing from her mouth. I let her finish, which she did with something that sounded like sob. There was a moment of silence. The whole bus held its breath. They were expecting me to cry, or to run, or to yell back. They were not expecting what came next. I leaned in slightly, as if sharing a deep secret, and with a tone of genuine, sincere apology, I asked, I am so, so sorry. Please tell me, where was I supposed to go? Over you? Because my broom is in the shop. I let the question just hang there in the air. For 2 solid seconds, nothing happened. The woman's brain seemed to be buffering, trying to process what ID just said. She was ready for a fight, for tears, for an argument. She was not prepared for a question about magical transportation. Her angry face contorted into a mask of pure confusion. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but no sound came out. It was like watching a computer freeze. And then it started. It began as a snort. A teenager near the front, who'd been watching with wide eyes, couldn't hold it in. He let out a loud snort laugh, then quickly tried to cover it with a cough. Too late. The dam had broken. The woman who'd been on the phone about Brenda let out a sharp giggle. The man reading the newspaper lowered it, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. A woman across the aisle made eye contact with me, gave a huge conspiratorial grin, and a slow, deliberate nod of approval. The sound rippled through the bus. It wasn't loud, roaring laughter. It was better. It was the suppressed, shaking, teary-eyed laughter of people trying desperately not to laugh out loud, which is always, always funnier. The bus, which moments before was the stage for her angry one-woman show, was now a comedy club, and she was the punchline. The effect on the woman was devastating. The laughter was like kryptonite to her rage. You can be a fearsome, intimidating public menace when 20 people are silently weeping with laughter at you. Her anger, her shield and weapon, was gone, replaced by a wave of pure, unadulterated humiliation. Her face went from fiery red to a blotchy pale white. Her mouth, which had been a geyser of profanity, clamped shut. She looked around at the laughing faces, her eyes darting back and forth, looking for an ally and finding none. The whole bus was united, not against her, but in a shared moment of ridiculous joy at her expense. She had lost the crowd. She did the only thing she could do. She deflated. Her shoulders slumped. She uncrossed her arms and grabbed the handles of her grocery bags. Without another word, without even a glance in my direction, she turned and bulldozed her way away from the doors, deeper into the crowded bus, seeking refuge in the anonymity of the masses. The human wall had crumbled. The path was clear. I turned back to the open door. As I stepped off the bus, I made eye contact with the driver in his giant side mirror. He had a huge, knowing smile on his face. He gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a nod of solidarity, a nod that said, I see this kind of nonsense every day, and that, my friend, was a work of art. As the bus doors hissed shut behind me, I could still hear the last few giggles from inside. I stood on the sidewalk, the cold air feeling crisp and clean. The bus pulled away, carrying its cargo of slightly happier, slightly less exhausted passengers into the night. And I was left with the profound, deeply satisfying feeling of a battle won not with aggression, but with absurdity. Walking home, the adrenaline faded, replaced by a deep, simmering satisfaction. I replayed the scene in my head, savoring her baffled silence and the wave of laughter that followed. It was a small victory in the grand, chaotic tapestry of city life, but it felt monumental. It got me thinking about the unwritten rules of public transit. We all know them. It's the stuff transit authorities like SEPTA try to formalize with their courtesy campaigns, like their old Dude, It's Rude initiative. They put up posters asking you not to block doors, to use headphones, to offer your seat. But these aren't just rules, they're the fabric of a functioning civil society in miniature. Rule number one, the one this whole drama pivoted on, is letting passengers exit before you board. It's rule one for a reason. It's about flow, efficiency, and acknowledging that the space is shared. When you stand in front of the door, you're not just being rude, you're a human traffic jam. You're throwing a wrench in the gears of the city. Then there's the rule about space. Only take up what you need. Don't put your bag on the seat next to you on a crowded bus. Take off your backpack so you're not smacking people in the face. This woman, with her grocery bag fortress, was violating this big time, claiming a huge amount of shared space as her own private kingdom. And what about handling conflict? My first reaction was anger, and that's normal. But a shouting match rarely solves anything. It just creates more stress and can even escalate into a dangerous situation. Sometimes the best strategy is disengagement, but other times, as I discovered, carefully deployed humor can be a surprisingly effective tool. It changes the dynamic. It reframes the aggressor not as a threat, but as ridiculous. It rallies the bystanders to your side, not as fellow fighters, but as an appreciative audience. It let me make my point, shame her into compliance, and give everyone else on that bus a story to tell, all without raising my voice. My comeback wasn't just a witty line. It was a strategic choice. It was non-confrontational, but incredibly pointed. It highlighted the utter absurdity of her blocking the path by offering an even more absurd alternative. It was, in its own small way, a lesson in creative problem solving. That single bizarre encounter on a cold Tuesday evening has stuck with me. It was a perfect storm of exhaustion, entitlement, and a flash of comedic inspiration. It reaffirmed my belief that while public transit can sometimes feel like a nightmare, it is also a place of shared humanity. And most people, the vast majority of us, are just trying our best to get through the day and get home. We follow the rules, we give up our seats, we say, "Excuse me." But for those who don't, for the door blockers, the loud talkers, and the seat hoggers, maybe the answer isn't always more anger. Maybe it's a little more absurdity. Maybe the answer is asking them, with a perfectly straight face, where they left their broom. And that brings me to you. I know I am not the only one with a story like this. Public transit is a goldmine for these encounters. So, I want you to do two things. First, if you enjoyed this little slice of karmic justice, hit that subscribe button because we all need more satisfying stories in our lives. Second, and more importantly, head down to the comments and tell me your best story of dealing with a rude passenger. What's the wildest thing you've ever seen on a bus or train? What was your comeback, or what did you wish you had said? Let's trade war stories. Let's create a library of public transit triumphs. Because at the end of the day, when we're all packed in a metal tube, hurtling through the city, all we really have is each other and the unwritten rules. Let's make sure we're all playing by the same book. And if someone forgets, well, maybe you'll be the one to remind them. Just be creative about it.